It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by SubashTechnosis.com. If you go to SubashTechnosis.com, they can help you with any kind of a website design, search engine optimization, content writing, data entry, press releases. They can even help you out with your customer service. If you have a website, you want one of those little chat boxes to do customer service for you. SubashTechnosis.com. You can also find them on Facebook at Subash Technosis LLC. If you contact them, make sure you mention Ed Opperman. I've known Subash for 10 years, and that's how you get a good deal. Okay, we got a really special show today. We have Lynn Ulbricht. She's the mother of Ross Ulbricht, who was convicted on charges related to Silk Road. You might remember Silk Road. That was the big heyday back in the deep web, the dark web. It was like an open market bazaar where you could pretty much get anything you wanted. And she's associated with the website freeross.org. So, Lynn, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Hi.
Thank God we got you. Okay.
Yeah, we got it. It worked this time.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Tell us about yourself. Who is Lynn Ulbricht?
Well, I'm a regular person who has been catapulted into this bizarre world of the dark net, encryption, legal issues, fighting for my son because he had an unfair trial. I'm very clear on that. Media, it's just been, I've been catapulted here, and I'm just doing my best to bring awareness to this case because I've had my eyes opened by dealing directly with how the government operates, and I frankly have been appalled and shocked at it. I had no idea that this is how the government operated in the criminal justice system, and since then I've gotten a lot more, you might say cynical. I'm not as surprised anymore, but I was very shocked. So I've been on a very steep learning curve about all of this, so I'm raising awareness and funds for my son's defense. That's really what I've been dedicated to for 3 years now.
Yeah,
but also the big picture. I really want to make that point because since my eyes have been opened so, directly, I realize this is a much bigger problem. And I think there's a lot of bigger issues at stake here. And so my hope and intention is that Ross's case will shine a spotlight on that, and that this can be used for a positive outcome, both for him and just to raise awareness so people realize what's happening to our constitutional protections because they're not being honored.
Yeah, until you've been the target of a federal prosecution or even a witness. You can even be a witness, a defense witness, or a prosecution witness. And until you experience the full power of the federal government coming down upon you, it's not what you think it is. It's a lot more intense. And the prosecution rate, the conviction rate in a federal case is in the upper 90s. It's an uphill battle.
Right, I think it's 99%, but only 3% of people actually go to trial. We're losing our jury trials in this country. Most people are pressured to plea, and they're penalized for going to trial if they're not exonerated. And frankly, from my son's trial, I feel like it was very much manipulated and unfair, and he's not unique, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a very small percentage of people actually win at a trial these days.
That's so true. And now, tell us about Ross.
Yeah, well, Ross, and we have a whole section in our freeross.org thing about site about him personally, because we had 100 people who know him personally write into the judge asking her, because he got a double life sentence plus 40 years for all nonviolent charges. And 100 people wrote very moving letters, which are posted on our site, about who Ross really is, and not the government narrative of who they say he is, based on what I consider, well, what a lot of people consider very flimsy evidence because it was digital, and very easily manipulated. But in any case, Ross, he's a very humanitarian person. He's worked for charities. He's donated in his book business percentage of his profits to charity. He's an Eagle Scout. He loves nature. He's a real nature boy, which part of this is so heartbreaking because he's been basically he's been in a detention center that the UN has ranked as torture. So he doesn't get outside much. He was an academic honor student and scholarship recipient, and got a bachelor's in physics and went on to get his master's in material science. He's very much of a freedom-loving person in terms of philosophy. He worked on the Ron Paul campaign. He got very enthusiastic about Ron Paul and, Austrian economics in graduate school. And that really became his passion, and free markets. But he's never been a drug person. He's a scholarship student. He's never been into drugs or even talked about them or cared about them. But he has been into libertarian ideals and free markets and very passionate about that. And of course, our whole family, my immediate family as well as our extended family, has stood behind him. His friends have stood behind him. Inmates in the prison have written letters on his behalf because he's helped them so much in there. He's tutored them to get their GED. He helped a few of them get into college online. He's conducted classes. He's informally tutored individuals. He's been a real model prisoner in that sense because he has a lot of compassion for people. So there's a whole list of things on our website, as well as those letters and testimonials from people who know Ross, and everybody says, wait a second, this guy doesn't need to be in prison. He's not a danger to anyone. And there's a lot of questions about how the prosecution painted him at trial and how the judge painted him at sentencing as well.
Well, why don't you give us an idea? What was Silk Road? What was it about?
Well, I thought Reason magazine gave a really good definition, which is a little more objective than some of it, which is, and you kind of touched on this, that it was really a dark web site, meaning you couldn't just go on the internet. It wasn't easy to get to. It was operated on the Tor router, which means the Onion router, which I'm not very adept at. I've never really used. Yeah, but I guess you can get on there, and everything is anonymous when you get on there. So your browsing history is not readily available to the government, which I think is actually a lot of journalists use it. Dissidents in other countries use it. It's not necessarily nefarious, although the prosecution in their papers in this case said anyone who uses it has criminal intent. Well, that's simply not true. But the site was based on a libertarian. Go ahead.
No, I was listening. Go ahead.
Based on a libertarian philosophy, which was free markets, where people could trade what was known as Bitcoin, a cryptocurrency. It's a digital currency, and there's a debate in the government whether it's even money, for a variety of goods. Yes, not all of them were legal at all, but there were restrictions, which since then there's been a proliferation of these dark websites that have no restrictions as far as I know. I don't go on them. I've never been on Silk Road, but there was nothing violent. There was no child pornography allowed. There was no stolen property allowed. I mean, there were restrictions, but drugs were allowed, and many libertarians think that's a choice, and the Silk Road administrators thought so too. But I'm not out there defending drug use or even Silk Road, but that was the philosophy of the site.
Now, Ross was one of the people who was using the moniker dreaded Dread
Pirate Roberts in the movie.
Right.
Well, that actually has not been established. He's pleading guilty, not guilty, excuse me. He's pleading not guilty, or he pled not guilty. There's lots of anecdotal evidence that there were many Dread Pirate Roberts, people using that name. Whether Ross did, or what he said was that he was not involved in being Dread Pirate Roberts. So, which actually came in later in the site's existence. It was something that, it sequentially happened when it was bigger and more organized. His lawyer said at trial that he created the idea and then got out and was set up later. And I believe that's true. But I don't know. I don't have any real personal, factual, definite information that that's true, but it makes sense to me. And so whether or not he was actually the Dread Pirate Roberts, or even if there was only one, which most people say there weren't many. And that would be typical of the internet and typical of these, names that they take, is that it's just a name that people use to be anonymous. And people, I don't know if you've heard of the movie Deep Web, but it was made about the dark net, and Ross was featured, and Silk Road was featured, and they went into the inside of the Deep Web to talk to people who had been high-level admins on Silk Road, and they all say, oh, yeah, there were lots of DPRs. They call it DPRs, shortcut, but there were lots of them. And there was even evidence at trial. One of the main investigators, who was on the site for 2 years and thousands of hours, said he believed there was more than one, that there were several. And there was other evidence that the jury was not allowed to hear, that there was more than one, probably several. And in a way it makes sense, because basically it's like saying Jeff Bezos runs everything about Amazon and, from a cafe on his laptop. I mean, basically that's what they're saying, and it's just not possible. And I've talked to programmers who say there's no way, especially they're dubious because of Ross's lack of computer skills in terms of that level. He didn't study computer science. He studied physics and material science. I'm not saying he doesn't know stuff. I mean, certainly knows a lot more than I do, but everybody his age does. But it wasn't something he was particularly advanced in.
Well, let me ask you this.
So to think that he did the whole thing is just ludicrous, really.
During this time, okay, when he was when he was involved with Silk Road, what was he telling his family that he was doing for a living?
Well, I don't know how much he was involved with Silk Road.
Okay.
But as far as what we know, Ross was involved in Bitcoin. He really was interested in Bitcoin. He was interested in creating a Bitcoin exchange. He was working in various political things like Ron Paul's campaign. This was all totally shocking to me when it all hit the news and all of that, and we were informed. We had nothing. This was totally new. This was completely unexpected and shocking. I'm still kind of have to wake up in the morning and go, is this real? I mean, seriously, is this real? So Ross has always been a wonderful son. He's been a great, lovable person, easygoing and peaceful. And the descriptions I've read about him are just, really ridiculous.
So then, what is the prosecution's theory of this case? What was he charged with?
Well, those are two questions, but he basically was charged at trial with narcotics trafficking, and then they had a lot more charges, or a few more charges at trial, which they were redundant, and so then at sentencing they brought it down to 5. And apparently, I've been told the government will do that. They'll pile on all these different ways to say the same charge so that it sounds worse than it even is. So the jury's more overwhelmed. But in any case, they had more charges at trial, but ultimately he was sentenced for narcotics trafficking, money laundering. Not that they said he laundered money, but that people on the site did. They were holding him responsible for everything that happened on the site, which is a whole other thing we can talk about. The precedent was established there, which is quite alarming. computer hacking, not that he hacked anything, but that some people sold software that could be used for that on the site, making false IDs, again, not that he did it. And then the other one was a continuing criminal enterprise, which is basically the kingpin charge, which is usually reserved for, Chapo and Pablo Escobar and violent kingpins who are handling deals and organizing specific people. And the statute requires that the prosecution names specific people, and they never did. They were never able to name anyone that this alleged kingpin was organizing, supervising, or managing, and yet he was convicted and sentenced on that, and that's got its own life sentence. And a lot of what they were basing on is the volume. Well, the internet has a way of, reaching a lot of people. So it's making it sound like it's equivalent to Pablo Escobar selling that, hands-on drugs kind of thing, or even not hands-on, but organizing people. And Silk Road was completely vendor and buyer-driven. It wasn't managed hands-on by anyone. I assume it was automated, but it's kind of like
eBay.
Yeah. Or Craigslist, or eBay, by the way, which someone made the point just the other day, sells combat knives, and so if someone buys one and then kills somebody with it, so is the CEO of eBay liable? Because that's really the question in this case. A lot of it is called transferred intent, and it's not just internet sites, although they're very vulnerable to this, because a lot of times they don't know what's on their site, or even they do know what's on their site, but they're, turning a blind eye, or they're allowing it, but they're not actually doing it. And so, with Federal Express was criminally indicted by the government for drug trafficking because people used it to ship illegal pharmaceuticals. Federal Express. And so they're using this theory of transferred intent, which is extraordinarily expansive, to say, well, you're not only responsible for what you directly do, but you're responsible for what other people do.
That's
and so there's an argument there that it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, because there is legal precedent where ISPs and chat rooms and these are held harmless if there's any kind of defamation or slander within their... Yeah, right.
That's correct. If this were a civil case and Ross are being sued, it would be thrown out instantly because it's civil. They're making it criminal, and that the worry of some people is that it could be a slippery slope into the criminal, and journalists have written about it, saying this could put a chill on the internet. If this kind of precedent goes forward, it's like, well, how much risk is one website host willing to take? An example of this exact thing, Amazon is being sued by a mother of a girl who bought cyanide on Amazon. They no longer sell it, but they did up until a few years ago. And she killed herself with it. And the mother's suing Amazon and the vendor. And it's exactly the same thing. Amazon knew they were selling cyanide. Cyanide killed this girl, allegedly, that she got it from Amazon. And Jeff Bezos is not in court. It's the precedent is somewhat troubling, to say the least.
Let me ask you another question. Now, in these kind of drug conspiracy cases, there's always that scene in the courtroom where they bring in the suitcases full of drugs and they throw it down on the table. There it is. Was there any evidence like that, any kind of the actual product brought into court?
No. There was no product. There was no one coming forward to say they were a victim at trial. No. There was nothing tangible. And in fact, the evidence itself, 99% of it was digital, which means chats, screenshots, digital information that I've been told over and over again, and is pretty well established, that it's very vulnerable to tampering, planting, editing, all kinds of tampering, and other courts have thrown it out. And in fact, a mortgage company won't accept a screenshot of a bank statement because they know how easily faked it is. And yet this court has a lower standard of evidence than a mortgage company. And you can just use your imagination to see how this could be put us all in peril. That all it takes is basically a computer and maybe Photoshop if you want to get fancy, to create evidence. And that's the kind of evidence that was used. And other courts have thrown it out, but in this case, at the trial court level at least, it's setting a precedent that digital evidence is fine. And meanwhile, we'll probably get into the corrupt agents, but they had access to all that digital evidence and the ability to change anything they wanted. And then that same material was used in trial. So if that's a whole other question. We can,
Yeah, we're going to need a lot of time.
But just to answer your first question, because I know we've gone off on, is that what happened in the trial as far as the government was they had a very specific narrative. And they wanted their trophy, they wanted their guy, and they prevented the defense from challenging this narrative. The narrative was, this is a kingpin thug who will do anything to protect his empire, and that's all he is. And the only thing on Silk Road was horrible, really hard drugs. They hardly mentioned even marijuana, which was the main product. And they did not allow Ross's libertarian beliefs to be mentioned to the jury. They didn't. The judge curtailed cross-examination of government witnesses where it was coming out that there was an alternate perpetrator. The court blocked defense witnesses who could have challenged the government's testimony. And this is all in the appeal, which we're right in the middle of an appeal. All the jury really got to hear, and they didn't get to hear about these corrupt agents. That was not allowed to be mentioned at trial, even though the court knew about it, and so did the prosecution, until 2 months after trial. And so the fact that there were these corrupt agents who had unfettered access, keys to the kingdom of this entire site, and stole over $1 million using their skills, and had the ability to do pretty much anything they wanted, was not allowed to be mentioned to the jury. So,
well, let's take a couple of steps back, okay?
Yeah.
The day you hear about this, your son Ross gets arrested. And you were in Costa Rica, correct?
Mm-mm. No, I wasn't.
No?
That somebody said that on deep web. No, I was in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
My husband and I were in Austin, Texas, and the day after he was arrested, we got a call from Reuters news service.
Really?
Telling us. That's how we found out. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly, I'm like, what? And suddenly, the neighborhood was, all these journalists were knocking on our door, calling us, emailing. It was a barrage of, we turned on the TV, and I'm like, what? It was so shocking. It was so unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. It was so weird. And we hadn't heard from Ross yet. And finally, he was able to call us, I think, the next day. I didn't know where he was. I didn't know what had happened to him. So anyway, yeah, it was talk about life-changing day.
Yeah. Now, when you finally did get a chance to talk to him, had he already started to arrange for an attorney? Was he already starting? Had he been in contact with anybody else before you?
He had a criminal defense, public defender assigned to him, who was a great guy, and I think he did a really good job. Very compassionate. He said to me, Ross is such a good soul. He's such a good person. He'd sit and visit with him. I mean, he's kind of like, I don't get clients like this very often. And he's a really nice guy, very available. But once Ross was sent to New York City, he was in California. And by the way, there is no good reason why Ross was being tried in the Southern District, except the Southern District wanted the case, and Chuck Schumer was behind the case.
Right.
I see they had this reason, which was basically there was a heroin dealer addict who was testifying at Ross's trial in exchange for leniency. So he had every incentive to lie, and in fact got caught in a couple of lies by the defense attorney and proven that he was lying, perjuring himself. And he said that he had bought heroin on Silk Road and sold it in New York. And just the fact that he said that gave them what they needed to prosecute and have the trial in New York City. And he isn't from New York. He was arrested in California. Shouldn't have been in New York. He shouldn't be in New York. But the Southern District is very aggressive that way.
Oh, boy.
So.
Yeah. Now, so.
Yeah. And Chuck Schumer called for the whole takedown of Silk Road. And my personal theory, just to throw that in, is I don't think this is about drugs, and I can tell you why. The biggest drug dealer on Silk Road got 10 years. The biggest cocaine and heroin dealer on Silk Road got 5 years. The guy who was running the next iteration of Silk Road, 8 years. But Ross gets double life, and they said, it's because you're the first to use the internet in this way. We're going to make you an example. And in this way is Tor and using a cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. And Chuck Schumer's on the banking committee. It's like, it seems to me so obvious. He also recommended the judge, Catherine Forrest, to her position. And Preet Bharara, the head prosecutor of the Southern District and of this case, was his special counselor for many, many years. So I feel like it was a real setup politically. And Chuck Schumer even came out publicly and before trial and said, congratulations, you DOJ, you got your man. I'm like, hang on, don't we have a trial first? Hello? Isn't it innocent until proven guilty? And apparently not for Chuck Schumer.
No, he's never been a fan of individuals' civil liberties.
No, he's definitely not.
Yeah, a very interesting guy. And I think he's running unopposed right now, too.
Is he really? That's so sad.
Well,
he had his own corruption issues when he was first running for office, though.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote about it, but whatever. doesn't touch that guy. So
okay,
anyway, but he,
Initially, Ross had a public defender. Then when they moved him to New York, then he hired an attorney, a law firm?
Yeah. Yes. Joshua Dratel, and he's been his attorney since then.
Was there ever a plea negotiation?
No, because what they said, whatever the plea was basically whatever, there was no maximum. In other words, it was like 10 years or whatever the judge wants to give you. So there was no maximum. So it wasn't really a negotiation. You know, it wasn't like any guarantee. Most pleas are like, it'll be 10 years, you know, if you say this. And that was not offered.
So they never had any offers?
Well, he had that offer. It's sort of, and they were very much urging him to do it. But they were really pressuring to do it, even before the bail hearing. But the lawyer didn't advise him to take that.
And what was the offer? He could have got 10 years?
Or whatever. There was no limit. It was like that was the minimum, and the maximum was life, which is what he ended up getting. But they Ross wanted to go to court because they knew about this corruption. They knew about all the questionable stuff, and they wanted a trial. You know, they wanted him to have a chance. So when you plead, that's it. You don't get to, it's over. And if the judge goes, well, based on what I'm seeing here, it's, in other words, if it would have been a feeling on it, that would be different. I'd never heard of a plea deal like that. I don't know if you have, but I haven't ever heard of that.
It's interesting. Well, in hindsight, considering the kind of probationary report he could have gotten with all these letters and stuff like you said, and the Eagle Scout, all this stuff, no priors. Right. He could have got. But anyway, that's all hindsight. Now,
she could have given him the mandatory minimum for the charges, and to me, the charges are questionable, of course.
Right.
But that would have been 20 years. She could have done that. For a 32-year-old guy, 20 years is a long time, and to me, it's like the Sentencing Reform Act says a sentence that's sufficient but no longer than necessary. She never gave a reason why it was necessary. She did get political about it and his political beliefs and use that as a part of it, justification, but we can talk about that. But he tell me that he's getting out in 20 years. He's not allowed on the internet or email or anything, and he's going to be a threat on the internet to anyone? Who knows what, it'll be like Rip Van Winkle coming back out of sleeping for, it's like it wasn't necessary to give him life. But she said she wanted to give him the worst possible sentence, which I assume if she could have given him the death penalty, she would have. She said the worst possible punishment because you're the first to use the internet in this way, and we're going to make an example of you.
Yeah, really.
And besides, she wasn't sure he had given up his political beliefs, and the site was philosophical, and she found it troubling and dangerous. Meanwhile, she's supposed to defend First Amendment rights. So that's another issue in the appeal.
Let's take a commercial break. We're with Lynn
Okay.
Ulbricht. You know,
Could I take one for about 10 years?
I know. I'm so sorry. Yeah, and I said before in the part, because we had to restart the show when we were recording.
Yeah.
Lynn Ulbricht could be any of our mothers. She could be my mother. You know, this can happen, except for the age difference. You know, I'm probably older than you, but the thing.
I doubt it.
this can happen to any of us. Any of us could find us in this situation where you become the target of the federal government, and it's just overwhelming odds. And you're sitting in some cage someplace with a public defender, and then they're pulling your case because some senator, senior senator from New York, is pulling strings behind it. And then, we can get into all this stuff, too, because then they try to Fourth Amendment defense, which is hopeless.
There's a book you may have heard of, 3 Felonies a Day, which is basically saying we're all guilty of 3 felonies a day. There is no one knows the number of laws on the books now. We're all in jeopardy because of this.
That is so true. That is so true.
Yeah.
And there's a documentary, too, with this Baltimore retired police officer who says, I can follow any car for 3 blocks and have a reason to pull him over. Because no one can, too slow, too fast. We're in a police state, and there's really no hope. Let's take a break with Lynn Ulbricht. The website is.
On that happy note, let's. Okay.
freeross.org. Also, too, there's coming up a free Rossathon, like a telethon all day long on December 9th. It's going to be 8 hours long, and you can find that at the freeross.org website. And also to the Free Ross community page on Facebook. So really try and send them a like, put a like on the Facebook page, get involved, keep updated on what's going on. The only hope we really have in these kind of cases is if we can put attention on them. Otherwise, you just have a guy, there's so many guys that don't have a mother ready to come on the radio, so sitting in these cages. Okay, let's take a commercial break. We'll be right back after this with more of Lynn Ulbricht, the mother of Ross Ulbricht from the Silk Road fame. And now a word from our sponsors. Did you know that 30% of all people on online dating websites and personal ads are either married or in a monogamous relationship? 30%. If you suspect that your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend may be cheating online, go to emailrevealer.com. And our online infidelity investigation. You give us their email address, and we could trace it back to online personal ads, dating sites, and social networks. We can even expand the investigation and find them cheating on escort service sites or even porn sites if they're registered to porn sites and swinger sites. So check out emailrevealer.com if you suspect your spouse is cheating, and check out our online infidelity investigation. William Ramsey is a producer here at the Opperman Report, and he's just come out with a new book, Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. Now, he just sent me a copy of this book. Oh, boy, it's about 2 inches thick, and there's a chapter on just about everybody in this book that you can imagine. The Beatles, and Jack Parsons, everybody's in here. It's incredible. And I definitely recommend this book. There's a bunch of pictures in here, too, of all these people and different chapters and information. Anton LaVey and people I've never heard of, too. There's a whole bunch in here. JFC Fuller. I don't know who he is. But it's great stuff by our producer here, William Ramsey. So check out Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. You can find it on Amazon.com, or you could find it in the Opperman Report.com bookstore. We have an urgent bulletin. It seems that the group Strawman is still on the loose. It has been confirmed that Strawman are Canadian, okay, and that authorities are asking people to stay indoors, lock your doors and windows until this group can be dealt with. You could find more information about this group of Canadians, at strawmanmusic.com. You can have your ad played here. Okay, we're looking for sponsors. Okay, in fact, we desperately need sponsors right now to take this show to the next level. So you can have your your ad played here, read live, like I'm doing now, so artfully. Or we can even work up a little jingle for you with some music and stuff like that and play it here. You have no idea how inexpensive it would be to have your ad played on the Opperman Report on 7 stations live Friday night and another 7 stations live on Saturday night, plus replayed every day of the week on different stations, and then archived on YouTube, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and all different kinds of podcasts, Pod This and Podbean, all different kinds of places who archive the show for us. And on those archives, your ad would play indefinitely, forever. You also get a little banner on OppermanReport.com. You get a mention on the air, you get a little interview on the air, and all kinds of fun stuff if you sponsor Opperman Report. We have an opportunity to get this show on a major AM/FM station in California. We've been approved. So if you want to sponsor us into that, so incredibly inexpensive that your ad would be heard by the range covers 5 million people in population where your ad would be broadcast, and all these other stations would be thrown in for free. So really affordable prices to sponsor OppermanReport.com. Get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You can get a copy of that book at emailrevealer.com, or you can get a copy of that book now. It's back up on Amazon.com. How to Become a Successful Private Investigator by Ed Opperman. And this book has been updated a little bit from the previous book that we had that was available to our wonderful listeners. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here with Lynn Ulbricht, the mother of Ross Ulbricht, who's serving a life sentence right now for the convictions related to Silk Road. You can find out more information at freeross.org. And also, there's a free Rossathon coming up on December 9th. And you can also check out Facebook at the Free Ross community page. So, Lynn, you there?
That's December 4th, by the way.
December 4th?
Sunday, December 4th.
See,
yeah.
My 4 looks like a 9. I got to fix that. It's December 4.
That happens.
Now, let me ask you a question. Now they grab him. He was never able to get bail.
Well, we tried for bail, and in fact, different individuals, family and friends, pledged $1 million. They put up their homes, they put up their life savings, because they know Ross and they trust him and they have faith in him, and they knew that he wouldn't run and leave them holding the bag. And there were 70 some odd letters, more than our attorney had ever seen in his 30 years of practice for a bail hearing. But what happened was, at the last minute, trial by ambush, which is what apparently the government does quite a bit, according to our attorney, they dropped these murder for hire allegations out there and said that Ross had planned murder for hire. And then when it came time to charge him, they didn't charge him with it. And it was never a charge at trial. So it was used to deprive him of bail, because normally you're supposed to get bail unless you're dangerous. And they claimed Ross was dangerous, which anyone who knows Ross realizes how absurd this is. And but that's what happened. And then they went on to use the same uncharged crimes to prejudice the jury. The judge allowed them to discuss it. They went, oh, well, he's not charged for this, but blah, blah, blah. And so the jury's listening to this whole thing. And then also the sentencing, the judge relied on it. And so it's being appealed. And people like LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and a former federal judge, Nancy Gertner, Drug Policy USA, and Just Leadership USA have all written a letter as part of the appeal saying this sentence, part of what they're saying is this should not be relied on with uncharged, unproven allegations. That should not be a factor in a sentencing. It should be what's proven in trial, supposedly proven in trial, and convicted, not, basically hearsay based on digital evidence.
Now,
He didn't get bail. That's correct.
He didn't get bail. Now, there was also some issues too with and again, what happens so often in these trials with the prosecution withholding discovery and then dumping thousands of pages on your lap the day before trial or a week before trial, or even sometimes in the middle of the trial. You know. But I believe this trial was only a couple of days. This trial only lasted a couple of days, right?
It lasted 3 weeks.
Oh, 3 weeks. Okay, really? Okay. So give us an idea now. What was some of the evidence that was dumped out like a week before that the defense was not able to review?
Well, it was the 3,500 material. There was the discovery material that was, I think, 6 terabytes worth, huge amount, that there were many delays and obstructions to being able to go through that. They did manage to go through some, and Ross is continuing to go through it now, post-trial. But because it's like several libraries of Congress, I think, is the amount of material. But in any case, 7 to 10 days ahead of trial, there was, I think it was 7,500 pages worth of stuff. I mean, a week before trial, basically. And they did go through it, and they did find evidence of an alternate perpetrator in the government's own evidence, and the government's own witness testified to this. And then the judge basically said, yeah, that's all relevant and it's all good on the 3rd day. And by the 4th day, which was after a long weekend, she came back and said, no, wait, I changed my mind. It's all irrelevant. Strike it from the record. Jury, forget you ever heard about this alternate perpetrator. And you can never mention it. And she basically put a leash on the defense from then on. And I have a little recap, a 3-minute recap on the homepage of freeross.org showing, the contrast between day 3 and day 4, because suddenly everything was off limits to explore in this realm. And that's part of the appeal, because it turns out, of course, that was one track, but the other is there were 2 corrupt agents who the defense was not allowed to talk about, mention, have anything to do with, and the jury was kept from knowing about. And that is suppressed evidence. That's in violation of the Brady rule, which says you can't hide evidence that's exculpatory, that's favorable to a defendant. That's against the law. And so that's a big part of Ross's appeal. It's like, hey, maybe the jury had been given all the evidence, there would have been reasonable doubt not to convict him.
Now, this story of these 2 corrupt agents is probably, to me, is the most fascinating thing in this whole story.
Yeah, it is.
The most
it's
tragic.
Not talked about nearly enough by the mainstream media.
Right, and you'd think, this is the most.
Yeah,
it's the most interesting part. Yeah, we can't forget, but putting aside the tragic, loss of the son here, sitting in jail, but this case where that, I believe. This DEA agent was also one of the leadership. He had assumed a leadership role. And so describe what happened here.
Yeah, you're talking about the DEA agent is Carl Mark Force, who was at the core of the Maryland investigation in Silk Road. He was one of the main people. The other agent, who the defense didn't even know about at trial, they were told about Force pre-trial and told he couldn't talk about it. They weren't even informed of the second agent, Sean Bridges, till after trial. Sean Bridges was working for the NSA at the time he was investigating Silk Road, which so presumably had all of their tools. But also, he was Secret Service at the time, so he was doing both. And they used they're both computer experts. Sean Bridges is a dark net expert. He's a record of framing people. And Carl Force was also very adept at computers. And they had the ability and the skill and the access to do anything they wanted on the site, and they used it to steal over $1 million, but in Bitcoin. But also, the government perhaps doesn't even know the extent of their corruption. There's still a big question, and this is really interesting, that we just know the tip of the iceberg, basically, is what our lawyer said about the corruption. I'm personally pretty sure there are more agents, corrupt agents. The guy who worked for Bitstamp, who helped expose Carl Force, one of the agents, just said recently in public yeah, I think there's more people out there. There's a lot of unaccounted for money, and there's all kinds of sealed and undisclosed evidence with these agents. They had encrypted emails that were not decrypted. They're in jail, and the emails remained encrypted. So the government doesn't seem very interested in getting to the bottom of this. For whatever reason, I mean, I personally think they're hiding something, but for whatever reason, they're not acting very keen on exposing this, unsealing it, getting to the bottom of it, and even talking about how the corruption could be a factor in the trial. So they don't seem to have an interest. They seem more interested in having their trophy, having their head on the spike of the, medieval castle kind of thing, to warn others and have their victory, and not really look into a lot of questions in this case and a lot of players who are very questionable people. And it's still unknown, the extent of the corruption. We don't know. And the defense is kept from knowing, and it continues. So
now, these two, were they convicted?
Yes, they've been convicted. They actually confessed. Okay. And they're in prison. One got 7 years, one got 6 years.
Now, it's interesting because now here you got a DEA agent, and it's notorious that, DEA, they do a bust, things, there's shrinkage, you might call it, with the money. Yeah. This is notorious, okay? What guy gets on the stage, what are you talking about? I had 8 pounds. I didn't have 7 pounds. What are you talking about? You hear this all the time. Okay, and sometimes it's on tape, too. It's just fascinating. But, this happens, this shrinkage. Things get lost, fall off the truck. But now, but somehow $1 million wound up in a personal checking account of one of these cops.
Well, Bitcoin account, yeah.
Oh, no, are you sure? Because I had read in an article that it wound up in a personal checking account, ultimately.
From the agents?
Yeah.
The agents had a personal checking account?
Yeah.
Well, I thought that that may be possible. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
They ended up with money.
Yeah, we're going to have to go back and look at that because you got to think these guys would know a better way to launder this money than wind up in their personal checking.
Yeah, I think it was in Bitcoin because Bitstamp, who I referred to before, where the guy who kind of exposed Force and got wind of his activity, that was Bitcoin. I think a lot of it, if not all of it, was Bitcoin. But I like I say, I'm not positive.
Then let me ask you this: if these two cops were able to siphon off $1 million, did Ross have a big account someplace in Switzerland or something like that with a lot of money where he could pay for a big defense and all this kind of stuff?
Wouldn't that
be nice? Yeah.
No. He had money. He had Bitcoin on his laptop. But the thing about that is, Ross was into Bitcoin years and years ago when it was worth very little, like pennies, dime, 15 cents. And he was totally into getting Bitcoin. And then, of course, it went to $1,000. I asked him back then, I said, Ross, should I get some? And he goes, Mom, no, it's too volatile. And I'm like, gee, I wish I hadn't taken that advice. But in any case, there's no proof of where Ross got that Bitcoin. But they were on his laptop and they've been seized. But in any case, no, there's no hidden wallet, a stash of money somewhere. There is money missing that they haven't accounted for. But no, it's not. Ross doesn't have it.
Now, when Ross was arrested, was he living in a big mansion someplace in Beverly Hills?
Yeah, he was wearing the shoes that I bought him for his birthday 2 years ago. He didn't own a car. He was sharing a flat in San Francisco with three other roommates, and one of whom came to trial and testified on his behalf. No, he was very simple lifestyle. Totally. I mean, yeah, and people look at me, I'm like, yeah, here I am, mother of Kingpin. Do I look like a mother of a Kingpin? I have no bling, believe me. Yeah. Well, I'm even less like a Kingpin than I used to be, not that I was, but, it costs so much money to have a defense. We're living in a very tiny little, extremely simple place, and, so we can afford to do this. I mean, everything goes to defending him. It's and as you, I'm sure, know, it's ruinous, and I think it's one way that the government does crush people is it costs so much money. And what the goal of this Rossathon is actually a $14,000 goal to pay for, not to a lawyer, but to a printer who had to compile who we had to hire to compile the appeals, appellate briefs in bound copies and make a digital copy for the court. It was over $13,000 just for that. Well, plus another, it was close to 14. And this is what it costs people to pursue justice. And we were told, well, if you can't do it yourself, because if you mess it up, they could throw the case out, and you don't dare, And it's crazy. And there's a whole sub-industry that's serving this whole machinery that's requiring all of this. It's just, and then we can get into the whole criminal justice system and the prison industrial complex and all that, and how much money is being made and how they're protecting that money with laws and all kinds of things, and how many nonviolent people and their children's lives are being destroyed.
Now, we've done 100 shows on that. Yeah, we get calls. We have callers calling from prison. We've done shows on that. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Well, I could tell you a story about my friend Reverend Pinckney. Forget it. He's in prison right now, 10 years for they claiming he forged some signatures on a recall petition they gave him. The guy's 67 years old.
Oh, come on. Come on.
God. I know. It's horrific.
Our country, I'm like, what? This is so un-American. And it's like, we have more of our citizens in cages than any country in history of the world, or any country existing now.
Yeah.
And that's like, really? This is the United States? What's going on? It's very, very bad.
But now,
and like you say, you don't realize it till you really see it. You kind of forget about it because it's, these guys in jail.
People will say,
I see the families. I know them.
There's people right now will say he's in Club Fed. 3 hots and a cot. He's on the tennis court.
Right.
Yeah, but that was a white collar crime. Give me a break. He's doing. They're nuts, man. But back to these two cops. Back to these 2 cops. Okay, because now now one of these they rose up in the ranks of this Silk Road to be administrators of Silk Road. Am I
I'm not sure how it transpired. They may have been appointed right out of the gate. I don't know.
Okay.
They were on it for 2 years. I know Carl Force was. He was for 2 years core investigator. Mm-hmm.
And he has a background too. He was doing these things where he would email someone a photograph of his badge as if to use that as a subpoena to get people to turn over records to him.
I didn't even know that. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm telling you, when I read these articles, I haven't read them recently, but when I did, the behavior of these 2 characters here is so beyond anything.
Yeah, it is.
Now,
and there's been several cases thrown out that Sean Bridges was involved in just because he was involved with them and he's so corrupt. And like I said before, I don't think they're the only ones. I don't. I mean, I don't have proof of that, but I think there's a lot more to the story. Otherwise, I don't think things would be kept so secret and all this money unaccounted for. I think there's more to it.
Now Sean Bridges was you said he worked for the NSA, right? The National Security Agency.
He was working for the NSA at the time he was investigating Silk Road.
Okay.
Concurrently.
Well, and NSA is not even supposed to be involved in investigations of U.S. citizens, right, or prosecutions whatsoever.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Well, he was also Secret Service, so I guess that was I don't know.
Well, sure, you take your hat off, you take the one badge off, you put it in the drawer, you put the other badge on, and everything's legal.
Yeah, no big deal. Yeah. It's fine. Yeah.
Now, the thing is, though, is that there's a Fourth Amendment.
And by the way, real quick, the NSA, Edward Snowden, addressing this case, Ross's case, said that it's unthinkable the NSA wasn't involved. And yet when the defense brought it up in a motion, the government's response was not, oh, no, they're not involved. Their response was mocking. They go, oh, the boogeyman, oh, you're going to bring up the NSA. But they never said no. They never said they're not involved. And it's well known that the NSA feeds the DEA information they acquired illegally, and then they give it to law enforcement, and they make up a story, parallel construction about, oh, this is what happened. This is how we got this. And it's not true. And it's covering up the illegal activity of the NSA. This is another thing that really should alarm people, that we have this basically rogue agency working against its own citizens, from what I have learned and understand.
And specifically in this case, there's a Fourth Amendment issue too, because there is no documentation. Well, explain what the Fourth Amendment issue is.
Well, the issue in the appeal is that the warrants that were used to seize Ross's laptop, Facebook, and Gmail accounts were called general warrants, which is the kind of warrant we fought the Revolutionary War for, because it was to prevent, and why they wrote the Fourth Amendment, is to prevent the government invading your home and rummaging from attic to basement for anything they can find, basically going on a fishing expedition. In this case, they raided Ross's digital home and went searching whoever they could find, and it's a general warrant. And Electronic Freedom Foundation, EFF, and National Association for Criminal Defense Lawyers have both signed on to the appeal saying, yeah, this is unconstitutional. And the government's response is, well, no, it doesn't count because it's digital. This is digital material, so it's not papers. Now, if it had been a physical file cabinet that they seized, there'd be no question this is unconstitutional. You have to go and get a folder and have a warrant for that folder. But they're saying a laptop doesn't count because it's digital. And meanwhile, it's like a file cabinet on steroids. It's a gateway to all kinds of personal information. It's more than a file cabinet. So this is a huge question for the digital age and our privacy rights in the digital age. And this isn't the only case where they're arguing it, but it's one of them.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the Fourth Amendment, even to find an attorney that's going to raise a Fourth Amendment defense these days, because it's so hopeless. Which well, you
know what the excuse the prosecution gave? They go, well, even if the warrants were illegal, the investigators operated in good faith, and this in good faith argument is being upheld in some cases. And I'm like, wait a second here. So if I do something in good faith and it turns out to be illegal, it's okay. You know?
Yeah, it's horrific. There really is no Fourth Amendment anymore. And they just had another ruling just recently where you can get pulled over to the side of the road, dragged out of your car searched. If they find nothing, fine, you go on your way. But if they find something, and then they find out that you have a warrant, all of that evidence used without a warrant, used without a probable cause, all that evidence can be used against you in court because you have a warrant. So it's just unbelievable. Let's take another little quick commercial break, okay? And can you give me about another half hour, you think?
Sure. What time? Yeah, I'm sure I can.
Okay, great. We'll take a look. We're with Lynn Ulbricht.
Yeah.
She's the mother of Ross Ulbricht, who got mixed up in this Silk Road prosecution. You could find out more about this case at freeross.org. And don't forget, there's a Free Ross community page on Facebook. And there's a big thing coming up December 4th, okay? If you tuned out earlier and you thought it was December 9th, you missed it, okay? But it's December 4th, the Free Rossathon. It's going to be 8 hours long, a whole bunch of people speaking, and they're going to be raising funds. I'm sure there's a donate button, too, at freeross.org. So we'll be right back after these messages with more of Lynn Ulbricht. And now a word from our sponsors. Did you know that 30% of all people on online dating websites and personal ads are either married or in a monogamous relationship? 30%. If you suspect that your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend may be cheating online, go to emailrevealer.com and our online infidelity investigation. You give us their email address, and we could trace it back to online personal ads, dating sites, and social networks. We can even expand the investigation and find them cheating on escort service sites or even porn sites if they're registered to porn sites and swinger sites. So check out emailrevealer.com if you suspect your spouse is cheating, and check out our online infidelity investigation. William Ramsey is a producer here at the Opperman Report, and he's just come out with a new book, Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. Now, he just sent me a copy of this book. Oh, boy, it's about 2 inches thick, and there's a chapter on just about everybody in this book that you can imagine. The Beatles, and Jack Parsons, everybody's in here. It's incredible. And I definitely recommend this book. There's a bunch of pictures in here, too, of all these people and different chapters and information. Anselm LaVey and people I've never heard of, too. There's a whole bunch in here. JFC Fuller. I don't know who he is. But it's great stuff by our producer here, William Ramsey. So check out Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. You can find it on Amazon.com, or you could find it in the OppermanReport.com bookstore. We have an urgent bulletin. It seems that the group Strawman is still on the loose. It has been confirmed that Strawman are Canadian, okay, and that authorities are asking people to stay indoors, lock your doors and windows until this group can be dealt with. You could find more information about this group of Canadians, at strawmanmusic.com. You can have your ad played here. Okay, we're looking for sponsors. Okay, in fact, we desperately need sponsors right now to take this show to the next level. So you can have your ad played here, read live, like I'm doing now, so artfully. Or we can even work up a little jingle for you with some music and stuff like that and play it here. You have no idea how inexpensive it would be to have your ad played on the Opperman Report on 7 stations. Live Friday night, and another 7 stations live on Saturday night, plus replayed every day of the week on different stations, and then archived on YouTube, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and all different kinds of podcasts, Pod This and Podbean, all different kinds of places who archive the show for us. And on those archives, your ad would play indefinitely, forever. You also get a little banner on OppermanReport.com. You get a mention on the air. You get a little interview on the air, and all kinds of fun stuff if you sponsor Opperman Report. We have an opportunity to get this show on a major AM/FM station in California. We've been approved. So if you want to sponsor us into that, so incredibly inexpensive that your ad would be heard by a the range covers 5 million people in population where your ad would be broadcast, and all these other stations would be thrown in for free. So really affordable prices to sponsor OppermanReport.com. Get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You can get a copy of that book at emailrevealer.com, or you can get a copy of that book now. It's back up on Amazon.com. How to Become a Successful Private Investigator by Ed Opperman. And this book has been updated a little bit from the previous book that we had that was available to our wonderful listeners. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here today with Lynn Ulbricht, who's the mother of Ross Ulbricht from the Silk Road fame. You can find out more about this story at freeross.org. You can also donate money at freeross.org. December 4th, there's a Free Ross-a-thon coming up with a whole bunch of speakers and guests. Can be 8 hours long. So, Lynn, you there?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, great. I always get nervous now because we had that problem in the beginning.
I know.
Now, what'd you think about the film Deep Web? Were you happy with the way things were laid out there in that film?
I think that I had some quibbles, and it's not an advocacy piece per se. However, I think that it definitely brought up a lot of questions. I think for the most part it was fair, and it certainly has opened a lot of people's minds and brought us a lot of support. And I will say that I believe that Alex Winter, the director, has a lot of integrity, and he is not doing this for sensationalism or anything like that. He really cares about making a good documentary and pursuing an objective point of view. So overall, my answer is yes, I am happy with it.
Is there any major issues you want to...
Like I say, quibbles, but yeah.
Anything you want to correct? Anything you want to correct about the film? Because I'm sure people are going to search for this and they're going to find that, Yeah.
Well, I mean, really, it's just like Ross. Like, for instance, as you brought up, Ross's personal friend on there said, we were in Costa Rica. Well, we weren't. And then he said, Ross wanted to join a fraternity. And I'm like, I even asked Ross about that. He goes, no, I never wanted to join a fraternity, and things like that, just little things like that, and nothing major that really changes. I felt like it showed enough of Ross and who he really is through video and that sort of thing that it really gave you a sense of him and his sweet character and harmless character, and saw us going through the whole trial and gave a sense about the drug war. I mean, I think it was very comprehensive. So in general, I would say, overall it was good. There were some things taken out that I wish had been left in, like an anecdote from this same friend who said that Ross, the friend, killed a bee or trapped a bee and put it in the freezer to kill it, and Ross ran over to the freezer to free it because he thought it was cruel. And I really had wished it had stayed because it shows, he's being accused of being a murderous kingpin, literally called murderous, and yet he was running over to save a bee. And he's just very compassionate. And so, anyway, this is a mother's point of view. I'm going, put that part in. But, no, I'd say overall it was good. And it's a really good movie. It's very riveting. It's not boring at all. It's very captivating.
And they did include a scene of Ross in a tutu singing "I'm a Little Teapot."
Yeah. He's very embarrassed about that, by the way. He goes, "Yeah, I know that probably," and I'm like, "Yeah, but it shows his playful side."
Well, when you're hanging out in prison with the other kingpins, you don't want that stuff coming up.
You don't want those kingpins in tutus. You don't find too many kingpins in tutus, I don't think. Now, I don't know any kingpins, but personally, but. Anyway, he's very playful. He's a lot of fun. He's very easygoing and got a great sense of humor, and that's him. And so I liked it that it was there. Thought it was cute.
Now, the other Fourth Amendment issue is the search of the Silk Road servers, which I believe were overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yes. I think there might have been a server in Pennsylvania and a server in Iceland, and I'm not the best person about the technical part. I can tell you that the ex-FBI agent Christopher Tarbell, who, by the way, was key to the investigation, served the criminal complaint, was the head of the arrest team, said how he found the server, claimed how he found the server. It was never at trial. He was kept from trial. The government did not bring him to testify or be cross-examined, which he was a key person in it. But in any case, his explanation of how he found the server was, basically mocked worldwide as absurd, impossible, a lie by experts all over the planet. And our own defense submitted an affidavit spelling out why what he said didn't add up and asking for an evidentiary hearing, which was denied. So basically, and then he goes, well, I'd prove it, but I didn't save my work. I'm like, what? The dog ate my evidence. It's like, you don't save your work on the biggest, and you have to click don't save in this particular program to not save your work. And surely the FBI has backup systems. But in any case, he claimed he didn't save his work, so he couldn't prove how he did it. You just have to trust him. And so, this has been, no one believes this. And yet he, under oath, he gave this explanation and got away with it so far.
Right, because all this evidence from the server logs was presented in court with really no explanation of how they got it.
Well, they have an explanation. It's just been called, it says there's no connection to the actual truth or how it could possibly have happened. And these are people, don't ask me to explain it because these are people who are technical experts, but it was, mocked and, discredited worldwide. And they explained how, and it's in Deep Web as well. If you saw the movie, you saw, I'm going blank on his name, but he's very well respected computer expert from Stanford saying this has no relation to the truth at all. This is ridiculous.
And meanwhile, we have another actor in all this who's Sean Bridges, who's NSA, who's in prison now, in jail, doing 6 years.
Yeah.
But exactly. You think a casual observer would overlook this and say, "Hey, gee whiz, maybe this happened. What do you think?" But no.
Yeah, is there reasonable doubt here?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's pretty amazing, really, and it just keeps being more bizarre all the time. It just keeps being bizarre. And so.
What's the next date for the appeal? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I'm done.
The next date for the appeal, what's coming up next?
Well, we just had oral arguments, which is when the 3 appellate judges here, get to, for 10 minutes aside. I mean, it's very fast. Question the prosecution, question the defense. And then now it's really up to the judges and their timetable. They have everything in writing and they have the oral arguments. So now it's a matter of when on their schedule they have time to write it up and make their decision and write it up and submit it. So that's the next thing we're waiting for. It's a nail biter.
And what are the major errors that you're trying to point out in the appeal?
Well, the preclusion of the corruption evidence is a big part of it, because it's saying we weren't allowed to pursue this. We weren't allowed to talk about it. This is wrong. This is not fair in a trial to not be able to present all the evidence. That's just very basic. The general warrants plus pen traps, which were misused without a warrant, the Fourth Amendment issues, that covers the Fourth Amendment issues, where they used pen trap and trace registers to track him, and that is illegal. And you can see that that's concerning, because the government can use these things to track you down, and they're not supposed to be. There's no law for that. And then the other major part of it, and there's all these details within it. It's a very long appeal. It's 170 pages, so it's really longer than most appeals, is the sentence. Because the sentence is so out of line with what's proportional or fair or really legal, and it relied on, besides the murder for hire, besides other things that were not at trial, were not proven, it also relied on Ross's political beliefs and Silk Road's political philosophy, and it's a real First Amendment issue, because if a life sentence can be bolstered by an attack on someone's political views, it's very concerning, obviously.
Okay.
Those are sacrosanct.
Yeah. That seems the corruption in these cops, that's huge, and the pen traps I wasn't even aware of. Okay, okay. Yeah, you got a good case. Okay.
That's in the appeal too. Yeah, and the appeal itself is on. You can link to from our website under documents. There's a page called the case, and it's such an unwieldy giant thing, and it's broken down into parts. And one part says documents. You go on there and you can read the actual appeal if you want to, and other defense briefs. Now,
about a year ago, I guess you had a heart attack.
I did what I had. I have a very healthy heart, and I don't have heart disease. What happened was it's called broken heart syndrome, and it's actually, I didn't even know this existed, but it did almost kill me. I actually literally came into the emergency room with no heartbeat and was saved by my brother-in-law doing CPR, my sister, and then the nurses and air flight and all. But it's from stress and grief, and it apparently your body makes this hormone that attacks your heart when you're really under this. And frankly, going through that trial and sentencing, I think I started having symptoms, and it just went downhill. And, yeah, I ended up in the hospital. But here I am to fight another day. It's like, but it takes its toll. This takes its toll on your family. It takes its toll on you individually, and not to mention financially and, so many ways. I do feel very privileged to be able to speak out about some of these violations, because Ross is not the only one, as you well know.
Yeah.
He's not unique. And I go to the prison regularly, and I know these families and these children, and who's going to speak for them? I mean, I feel like I'm doing that for them too, because it's just what's going on is wrong. And Judge Kaczynski of the Ninth Circuit said there's an epidemic of prosecutorial violations in this country, and they're not getting any consequences. I guess in California they've passed a bill now that they will have some consequences, but I mean, it's really, really wrong that they can ruin people's lives and withhold evidence and all kinds of things without any repercussions. And in fact, they get promoted.
Yeah. It's just amazing the amount of energy and resources that we spend fighting government oppression, that if all this could be unleashed, for good, for good works.
That's a really good point.
It's just
that
amazing.
Is such a good point.
It's overwhelming. Mm-hmm. But we got to keep fighting. We got to resist. We got to keep fighting. We can't stop.
Well, you got to. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Just lay over and let them take our country and our freedom?
It's all going to get worse.
You know? Yeah. I mean, you got to. I mean, at least I think I'll go down fighting. You know?
Yeah.
It's like it's. You know, I hate to see our country and our Constitution hijacked, and that's what I feel like I'm seeing. This is my personal belief. I mean, I don't want to, you know, but it's like, yeah. And anyway, it's very. I feel like we're at a tipping point in history. I really do, and I feel like it can go either way, and I'm very, very concerned about it. So,
when's the last
time? I hope
time?
we're at the point. I hope we haven't gone over the edge yet.
When's the last time you talked to Ross?
Oh, I just talked to him yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, he calls pretty frequently. The day before. But his dad visited him yesterday. I'll visit him next week. You know, we sometimes take turns, or I'll go. It's you know, or I always make sure he has a visit. I think it's so important for these guys to at least have some interaction and connection with the outside world, and a lot of them don't have that, which is a whole other heartbreaking story. But I make sure Ross does.
Now, is he?
I've tried to help other inmates get visitors, but it's been very difficult. I haven't been able to pull it off. There's a lot of bureaucracy involved.
Yeah, and that's a whole trip in itself too. But
yeah.
Now, is he able to have one of those Amazon wish lists where people could send him books and stuff? We
do. We have an Amazon wish list. And I don't know if there's much on it right now, but yeah.
How would you find
that? They can do that. They can. It's on our donation page.
Okay.
And there's also the commissary if they want to give to that instead. If they don't want to give to the defense fund, if you buy through Amazon, you can help us out there. It doesn't cost anything. There's a game based on Ross's art they did in prison that we've made that is very cheap, $1 to play basically, and that's a fun way to give. There's the Rossathon. We're always coming up with something, right? Trying to raise money because our lawyers are very patient and very dedicated, but it's very expensive, as you know.
Yeah, and it's true. Even the lawyers and investigators and any expert witnesses will be so patient, you know, and you'll do work for free.
Yeah, they are.
But it's a life. It's like a mortgage. It's a lifetime bill for the rest of their life. You destroy a family trying to get their kid out of trouble. It's just heartbreaking. Now, is there anything I've forgotten to ask you that you think it's important that you want the audience to know?
Well, just that the precedents that are being set here. I think that because I want people to realize this isn't just about my son or a website and please don't get distracted by all the sensationalism around the case because it's really precedent is being set. And these high-profile cases, traditionally the government uses them to make bad law, and it filters down, and then it's just the way it is. So we have the use of digital evidence in a trial. We have transferred intent, making somebody responsible for what other people do. We have the Fourth Amendment violation, First Amendment violations. I mean, there's a lot. It's this appeal. God forbid. I'm praying and hoping that it'll be reversed. That it will be a good pushback and it will be changed. But if precedent is set, this means going forward, other people's trials will have that energy behind them that, takes away our rights some more. And I'm probably not even remembering all the precedents. There's so many. So these trials are important and these cases are important. And it's not just about a guy or, because, look, people don't know my son. They don't know him. I mean, what? But really, there's much bigger issues here at stake. And that's really what I've been concentrating on and trying to have people understand. That it affects us all.
Okay, and one last thing, because I know a lot of people are going to comment and they're going to say, oh, Ed, the deep web, the dark web, it's all child pornography over there. Was there any evidence, any kind of child pornography on Silk Web?
Absolutely not. That's what I was saying in the beginning.
Right.
In fact, they had some debates because I know whoever it was, there was a forum and I was able to read it after the fact. Well, hey, if this is a free market, we should be able to have child pornography. And the administration of Silk Road just said, no, we're not having it, and you can go somewhere else. There was no child pornography and at all. And so that needs to be clear. And people go, oh, there were assassinations. No, there weren't. It's amazing what the media will say. You know that, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, no, there was none of that. Look, I'm not, like I say, I'm not defending Silk Road. I'm certainly not advocating drug use or any of that. I'm not. And, you know, there were unsavory things on Silk Road. There were unsavory things on the internet. Child porn wasn't one of them on Silk Road. But that, and I get that, and we can argue about that or not argue or agree, but that's not really what's important here, really. It's this precedent that's being set because it applies. Like I was saying, FedEx gets a criminal indictment under the same philosophy, the same theory, legal theory as Silk Road. The same, transferred intent. FedEx is responsible for its customers, what they do. And, you know, that's a slippery slope.
And so, one other thing, too, is that even after they took down Silk Road, like 20 other sites popped up like the next day, right? It's not like this put an end to it.
Oh, and they're bigger, and they don't have the same restrictions, the same philosophy. I mean, Silk Road had a book club, and it had, you know, various doctor on to advise people and all kinds of things. It was more like a little political community. I'm not making it like it was nothing, but it did have those aspects. These don't. This is pure out whatever, you know, commerce. And the joke of it is, the bad joke, is that he was given this sentence to stop other people from doing it. Well, no, it's had the exact opposite effect. There has been no deterrence. It's been, you know, in fact, a proliferation of these sites. So that the life sentence didn't work in that regard.
Right, and every one of these sites, these other sites now that popped up, they can all have DEA agents working there and NSA agents working there, siphoning off money and taking their little cut and doing whatever they're doing too as well.
I assume so.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. That could be a whole, I don't know. That's an interesting point. I'll have to think about that one.
Yeah.
That's probably true.
Lynn,
you know more about these things than I do.
Yeah. Lynn, thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you so much. It's been fun.
It has been. Thank you so much. Anything new comes up.
You're fun to talk. You're very fun to talk to. I really enjoyed it.
Well, you know, you try and make it easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're fun.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
That's not always true of interviews. Yes, no, I will definitely stay in touch. Absolutely.
Anything new comes up, you hit us right up. We'll put you right on the air.
Sure will. And thanks for all your good work.
Thank you again. Mm-hmm. There we had Lynn Ulbricht, the mother of Ross Ulbricht, Silk Road. The website is freeross.org. They have a free Rossathon coming up December 4th. It's going to be 8 hours long. You can find that too on freeross.org. A whole bunch of people are going to be on there. Adam Kokesh, Alex Winter, who directed Deep Web, Bob Murphy, Brian Dougherty, the senior editor of Reason Magazine, Ross's sister. There's a ton of people on here. Radio hosts, lobbyists, Doug Casey, best-selling author of Investment Advisor. About 30, 40 people. It's going to be an all-day long opportunity to get involved and see what's going on at the Free Rossathon. You can find out about it at freeross.org. I guess that's about it. You know, like I said, Lynn Ulbricht could be my mother. You know, I was facing a lot of time, 15 years in prison. And there's a lot of guys I've talked to that are sitting in prison right now that don't have a mother and a sister and then a TV movie out there helping them out and stuff like that. So it's a rough road when you're on the wrong end of the federal government prosecuting you. And, people see these old mafia guys, they're walking around being wiretapped and they think, they deserve it. They lived a life of crime. We all have our civil rights. When they could take away the rights from one person, they could take it away from any one of us. And it's a slippery slope, like you said. 30 years ago, 20 years ago, when we would get these cases, especially drug cases or any case involving a search, the first thing you do is Fourth Amendment. Let's attack the search warrant. And now it's not even a consideration to even find a lawyer that's going to raise a Fourth Amendment to attack the search warrant defense, to try and get the search warrant thrown out, to try and get the search thrown out, the probable cause. All that is, I don't even think these lawyers today even have a basic working knowledge of how to file those motions anymore. It's just all gone. So you hear people talking about when they ask Donald Trump, or what do you think about the Constitution? What kind of judges are you going to appoint? The first thing they'll say, oh, the Second Amendment. I'm going to have judges that are defending the Second Amendment because the Second Amendment's under attack. When 99% of us in our life will never have an instance in our life that involves the Second Amendment. Most people have no trouble purchasing, buying, selling guns if they want. And, no matter all the hype, there's really no attack on it in the future. But it's the Fourth Amendment that has been under attack for the past 30 years that most of us, if you have an issue with the courts, this is our defense. This is your big defense. That's the one that we can use, to attack these search warrants, to attack these, even when they don't have warrants, to attack the evidence against us. This is what, we need. This is what we should be concerned about. And I'll talk about it, And then, of course, the First Amendment, being able to come on the air here and talk to you, without being silenced and targeted by the government and silenced and shut up. Anyway, Lynn Ulbricht, mother of Ross Ulbricht, Silk Road, freeross.org, and you go to their Facebook page and show them some love over there at the Free Ross community page. We'll be right back after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. Did you know that 30% of all people on online dating websites and personal ads are either married or in a monogamous relationship? 30%. If you suspect that your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend may be cheating online, go to emailrevealer.com. Our online infidelity investigation. You give us their email address, and we could trace it back to online personal ads, dating sites, and social networks. We can even expand the investigation and find them cheating on escort service sites or even porn sites if they're registered to porn sites and swinger sites. So check out emailrevealer.com if you suspect your spouse is cheating, and check out our online infidelity investigation. William Ramsey is a producer here at the Opperman Report, and he's just come out with a new book, Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. Now, he just sent me a copy of this book. Oh boy, it's about 2 inches thick, and there's a chapter on just about everybody in this book that you can imagine. The Beatles and Jack Parsons, everybody's in here. It's incredible. And I definitely recommend this book. There's a bunch of pictures in here, too, of all these people and different chapters and information. Anselm LaVey and people I've never heard of, too. There's a whole bunch in here. JFC Fuller. I don't know who he is. But it's great stuff by our producer here, William Ramsey. So check out Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. You can find it on Amazon.com, or you could find it in the OppermanReport.com bookstore. We have an urgent bulletin. It seems that the group Strawman is still on the loose. It has been confirmed that Strawman are Canadian, okay, and that authorities are asking people to stay indoors, lock your doors and windows until this group can be dealt with. You could find more information about this group of Canadians, at strawmanmusic.com. You can have your ad played here. Okay, we're looking for sponsors. Okay, in fact, we desperately need sponsors right now to take this show to the next level. So you can have your ad played here, read live, like I'm doing now, so artfully. Or we can even work up a little jingle for you with some music and stuff like that and play it here. You have no idea how inexpensive it would be to have your ad played on the Opperman Report on 7 stations. live Friday night, and another 7 stations live on Saturday night, plus replayed every day of the week on different stations, and then archived on YouTube, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and all different kinds of podcasts, Pod This and Podbean, all different kinds of places who archive the show for us. And on those archives, your ad would play indefinitely, forever. You also get a little banner on OppermanReport.com. You get a mention on the air, you get a little interview on the air, and all kinds of fun stuff if you sponsor Opperman Report. We have an opportunity to get this show on a major AM/FM station in California. We've been approved. So if you want to sponsor us into that, so incredibly inexpensive that your ad would be heard by a the range covers 5 million people in population where your ad would be broadcast, and all these other stations would be thrown in for free. So really affordable prices to sponsor OppermanReport.com. Get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You can get a copy of that book at emailrevealer.com, or you can get a copy of that book now. It's back up on Amazon.com. How to Become a Successful Private Investigator by Ed Opperman. And this book has been updated a little bit from the previous book that we had that was available to our wonderful listeners.